We took some swings, and they were swings and misses, and I take responsibility for that. But I really pushed back hard on this narrative that nobody wants to play in San Francisco, nobody wants to play for the Giants.
We're back on FT. Farhan Zaidi is joining us right now, former president of baseball ops for the San Francisco Giants. Before that, with the Dodgers as their GM. Farhan, happy holidays to you. Thank you for joining us. And as you say hello to us, just wanted to know if your stress levels, at least this holiday season, might be a little more normalized. And the family's like, all right, we got full Farhan at the table.
Yeah, that's definitely true. The stress level is down. I think my wife's stress level is up. I think she's ready to get me back out of the house. But my stress level's doing great, thanks.
Wait, what's the closest?
Is your fantasy football game better?
It's going okay. I mean, I'm in the Giants office league, made the semifinals. I've been grinding along. So, yeah, it's doing okay. Yeah, I had a couple of down years, so I probably have more time on my hands now to lock that.
You're elite. He's elite. For anybody who doesn't know, Farhan Zaidi is elite fantasy football player. But when you got hired by the Giants, you had too much to do. So clearly, you couldn't be getting those guys off the waiver wires.
That's exactly right. I was in Brandon Crawford's league for a couple of years and got booted out for finishing too low, if you can believe that. So I'm back on my game now. Back on my fantasy game.
Nice. What's the late? I want to know what's the latest you've ever done a deal around the holidays, Christmas, whatever one, New Year's. Like, if you ever got a call on like December 24th and someone's like, it's almost Christmas or it's almost New Year's, December 31st. And you're like, I'm out of the club, but I can't be making this trade right now.
Well, I wouldn't say I'd be at the club, but my wife's family and my family are out on the East Coast in Atlanta and in New Jersey. And I have a lot of memories of having to hide in an office or in a corner of a house during the holidays trying to get a deal done. So it's amazing that, you have this kind of holiday stretch. You think deals are going to slow down, but there's still a lot of activity. I mean, you look right now, there are a ton of free agents out there. There's a ton of trade conversations going on. And I think we're going to keep hearing about that the next couple of weeks.
Did you ever have like a mandate where you were sitting there going, I just can't today? Because all I ever hear from GMs and players of baseball operations, it's like, you are married to this job and it is 24 hours a day, 365. But did you ever set a mandate where you were like, it's my anniversary, we're not talking to anybody right now?
I got to say, it's one of those situations where it's better to ask for forgiveness than permission, because you're always worried about losing that big deal. And, when somebody calls you, when a trade partner, an agent calls you, and it's somebody that you're really eager to acquire, you just can't put the phone down. So they're probably better people than I am at doing that, but I never could.
All right. So now that you're looking back at it, you're a few months out of the job. What would you have done differently? What would you have done differently, knowing what you know now, but then also learning, from where you were when you came over from the Dodgers to the Giants?
That's a great question. I mean, one of the things that I think you always look back on in these situations is just staying the course. I mean, it's such a competitive and even cutthroat industry now that, you may have certain philosophies, and as time goes on, if you're not getting results, whether it's from a strategy or whether it's from a player, just trying to figure out when the right time is to pull the trigger on making a move. But, when I look back, I think, there were times it might have been made more sense to stay the course on certain things, because baseball's a grind. It's a long season. We know things even out. And, sometimes it's hard to take your finger off the trigger and just let things play out. But that's probably one of my biggest lessons.
Were you a hands-on GM? Were you a Billy Bean? I'm going to send you the lineup every day, Gabe Kapler? Or were you
I know there's a lot of talk out there. I think my reputation precedes me with that kind of thing. I mean, you look around the game, front offices and, managers, there's a lot of interaction. There's a lot of exchange. I never made the lineup. I know Will Clark thinks I made the lineup, but, and I love Will, but that just wasn't the case. Sometimes you're wondering, hey, our starting catcher is going to catch 2 out of 3. What's the right time to drop in the backup? Or, you want to get the staff's thoughts on how they view the starting pitcher for the opposing team. Do we think this guy is better against lefties or righties? What does that mean in terms of the guys we put in the lineup? But I viewed it all as a conversation. I never said, this guy's got to play. I think when you take a step back, you might say, hey, we're bringing this young player up. We want to give him some playing time. So general things like that. But, on a day-to-day basis, we definitely had conversations about the lineup. But, there was never the handing over of a slip that had the guys 1-9. I think that's a real misconception.
I know being there in 2019, I could see for that month I was there that you had a lot of different people making and helping with decisions. I felt like you delegated that really well in that short amount of time I was there. Why do you think in 21 the model didn't continue to repeat itself? 107 wins, or am I docking you one? Was it 108?
No, I think it was 107 on the dot, so you nailed it. It's a really good question. Obviously in 2021 we used a platoon heavy approach, and I've heard you guys talking about that on a couple of other shows. I'll say a couple of things about that. One is when I first got to the Giants, when I met with the ownership group, one of the things I said is I would love us to be the New England Patriots or San Antonio Spurs of Major League Baseball. Those organizations in other sports have such amazing cultures. They're all about putting the team above the individual. And, I have so much respect and belief in that kind of culture in an organization. And to me, when you talk about something like platooning or even pinch hitting, there's a certain selflessness to that when it works, it really builds the culture. And so to me, this is not an X's and O's numbers spreadsheet thing. This is about passing the baton. This is about, being a team collectively. And in 2021, we really captured that, and, it worked really effectively. And one of the things that I always remember is talking to other GMs or other managers. They'd be like, man, I hate playing you guys because when you get late in the game, it seems like you guys always have an answer, and a way to get the matchup. When that doesn't work, it's kind of a house of cards. It's a really fragile thing because, every individual, every player is a competitor. They want that at bat. They want the start. And when the results aren't there, everybody feels like they're the answer. I mean, that's what makes a competitive professional athlete. So I think we saw some of that. Look, at the end of the day, there's a talent thing. It's always about talent in the end. In 2021, that was Buster's last year. We got great years from Brandon Belt and Brandon Crawford, and then those guys got banged up the next year. So there was some of that, but I also think, the system we had in place, it can be a little fragile, and when you don't get the results, it can fall apart.
Okay. So let me continue kind of down this road because I have asked this question a million times. If you guys could have signed the big free agent, I know you tried Correa and Judge, Arson. You guys signed Arson Judge.
Yeah, they did.
So congratulations. Forgot to mention, congratulations on Arson. But if you guys would have done that and could have done that, do you think that would have changed your philosophy a little bit? If you could have signed one or two of the bigger stars, I know Posey left and you weren't platooning Posey with anybody, right? But if you could have signed Aaron Judge or Carlos Correa
Harper?
And brought them in, what?
Bryce Harper,
any of the guys that the Giants were rumored to be in on, do you think that would have changed your philosophy at all? Because when you have a star player like that, you ain't platooning Bryce Harper, Aaron Judge, Carlos Correa.
Absolutely. I mean, when you think about it, you look around the game and, teams have basically 4-man benches, really 3-man benches when you count the backup catcher. Every team in baseball has 1, 2, or 3 platoons. That's just a fact. It's a question of how you're using your benches, but everybody uses it for at least 1 platoon, sometimes 2 or 3. And, you look at the Dodgers. The Dodgers are actually a very platoon heavy team. But to your point, AJ, they've got Ohtani and Betts and Freeman who are in the top 3 spots of the lineup every day. So I think when you don't have that star player that you can anchor things around, it just gets noisier. The platooning thing becomes a bigger story, because maybe you're platooning at the top of the lineup or the middle of the lineup instead of the bottom of the lineup where people seem more okay with it. So I do think having a core of everyday players, 4, 5, 6, everyday players, and then platooning sort of with the complementary parts of your roster, that's very workable. And that was one of the really shortfalls that we had, is not being able to sign one of those star players that you mentioned and it put a lot of focus and attention on the fact that even our frontline guys we were using in matchups at times.
Okay, why then? Why'd you miss out on these guys? Because I played in San Francisco. It's a great place. Fan base is strong. Even if they like you or dislike you, they let you know. They came out to every game.
Tough ballpark.
Yeah.
Not for you, but
I had a
for
good
hitters.
year that year, so I don't know. I did fine. I
No,
wasn't Barry
look,
Bonds,
it's a great question, and when I look back, when you're talking about Harper, Judge, Ohtani, these are like three of the five best players in baseball. So I guess we took some big swings. Obviously, what happened with Carlos Correa was very unfortunate, but we took big swings, and with each of those guys, I think Bryce had some concerns about the ballpark. That can happen at times when you're trying to sign a position player. Not always, but it's something that position players have some concerns with. Some guys are just East Coast guys and want to prefer to be there. I look at Aaron Judge. I mean, he had a legacy with the New York Yankees, one of the signature franchises in baseball, and it was kind of hard to pull him away from that. We tried, but ultimately didn't work. And then you look at Shohei. He was building a house in Southern California. Obviously, the Dodgers have been really successful. So I don't know that there's really a common thread. We took some swings, and they were swings and misses, and I take responsibility for that. But I really pushed back hard on this narrative that nobody wants to play in San Francisco. Nobody wants to play for the Giants. It's a great city. It's a great organization. I have been so happy in my time in San Francisco, and I wish the organization the best. And I know that they're going to continue to be able to attract players. And, Willie Adames a couple weeks ago is just the last example of that.
Take us into that room. Take us into the room when Judge and you and ownership and other front office coaches at the time are talking to him, because we just got done seeing the Juan Soto thing. But take us into that room, and do you sit there and you go, man, this guy really, like you said, he's got a legacy in New York. Are we just bidding up the Yankees here? Is this really worth it because I don't know? Or do you have to be 100% plowing ahead all in?
Yeah, you definitely are looking for signals. Guys say things. Sometimes an agent or player says something in passing, and you just put so much weight on it. You're like, oh man, that means we're out on this one, or that's a really good sign. Sometimes I think we get a little crazy with those things. But when I look at the Aaron Judge situation and meeting with him. And I don't want to talk about any one specific player. That's not fair to them. But I think in general, and you guys I'm sure can relate to this, I think fans sometimes think that players have this predetermined notion of where they want to go or what they want to do. But the reality is, it's like for all of us, when we have life decisions, you can go back and forth on them. You might wake up one morning and say, hey, I want to stick with the team that I've been with. I have a lot of loyalty to them, and it's been great here. And there might be other days you wake up and you say, man, I'm sick of this place. I get booed here, and people don't appreciate me here, and it's time for a new beginning. So I have really noticed that in some of these free agent pursuits, whether it's a superstar or not. Players have to think through things, and they might think one thing one day and another thing the other, and you just have to stay persistent in your pursuit and hope it winds up in your favor. But I just think in some of those cases that we talked about, the players themselves went back and forth on whether we were in the lead or not.
This holiday season, I want to give a gift to my loved ones that makes them feel special and unique. That gift is StoryWorth.
Here's how it works. Each week, StoryWorth emails your loved one a thought-provoking question that you get to help pick. Things like, what's the bravest thing you've ever done? And what's the farthest you've ever traveled? All your loved one needs to do is respond with a story. Long or short, it doesn't matter. After that year of fun, StoryWorth compiles those stories and photos into a beautiful keepsake hardcover book that you'll be able to share and revisit for generations to come. This is the perfect book to pass along at family gatherings or read with your kids. It is beautifully orchestrated by StoryWorth, and that's why it has more than 35,000 five-star reviews on Trustpilot, with millions of stories preserved since they were founded over 10 years ago.
With StoryWorth, I'm giving those I love most a thoughtful personal gift from the heart and preserving their memories and stories for years to come. Go to storyworth.com/foul and save $10 on your first purchase. That's storyworth.com /foul to save $10 on your first purchase.
I wanted to ask you about Matt Chapman's situation. There were also I feel like this is the time to clear some stuff up. Like what happened at the finish line there? There was all kinds of articles, who got the deal done, all of that. Can you give us any insight there?
Yeah, absolutely. The whole negotiation happened over the course of 2 weeks. We started in mid-August. I think we had the press conference for him the first few days of September. I've done a lot of deals with Scott Boras, for better or worse. I have a lot of respect for Scott, but you look at Jung-Hoo Lee, Michael Conforto, Sean Manaea. I'm sure I'm forgetting some other guys there, but done a lot of business with Scott. I mean, even the Carlos Correa deal I negotiated with him. So, we were making a lot of progress. I thought we were in the red zone. Maybe we were even at the 5-yard line. We had already offered him a 6-year, $150 million deal. And then he wound up having a meeting with Buster. I think, for me, having Buster was a huge asset just because of the respect that players have for him. And, sometimes players want to talk to other players about things. What's it like to play here? How can we, tie the knot on this? And I totally respected that. I loved working together with Buster. And those two guys sat down and, there were a couple of things like a no trade, which we were, inevitably going to give anyway. We added $1 million to the 150. We had some small deferrals in there that ultimately we took out. And those guys kind of hashed out the end of the deal. So I was just thrilled to get the deal done. These things always happen in collaboration and teamwork, whether it's the owner, whether it's somebody in a position like Buster, or whether it's the head of baseball operations. I mean, even Bob Melvin was involved in it because of his relationship with Matt. So I never viewed myself as being out of the loop or that, I'd ceded negotiations. Every conversation with Scott Boras on behalf of the Giants I had. But I think Buster and Matt sitting down helped get the deal across the finish line on a couple of the smaller issues. And I'm thrilled that it did because he's a great player. And I think, the Giants organization and Giants fans are all thrilled to have him for the next 6 years.
Farhan, be honest, you just wouldn't give him a suite. That's why he held out. You wouldn't give him the free suite, okay?
That. Yeah, I still haven't done that. That's one thing I'm very proud of on my track record. Although, one of those guys, whether it was Judge or Harper or Ohtani, they probably would have broken the streak, but that streak's alive. So that first tweet is still out there to be had.
Whew. Okay. Now, did you think you had Arson Judge when the tweet came out? Did you think that you had him? Was there like a little bit of you that was like, well, I haven't heard this, but if certain people are tweeting this, then maybe we do have this done?
Well, I would think that if we had him, I would be the first to know. So I knew it was false, and I was not happy about it at all.
Oh,
John Heyman and told him to take it down immediately because, our whole strategy with that situation was let's just stay around the backboard. He's got a lot of allegiance to the Yankees, but, they seemed like they had reached an impasse in negotiations, and it was a question of whether the Yankees were going to take that last step to get the deal done, or whether there'd be an opportunity for somebody else. So we were kind of right in that window where I thought there might be an opening for us to get the deal done. Then John sent that tweet out, and honestly, I mean, and Yankees people will tell you it really spooked them into getting the deal done, having the 9th year. So I blame John. I mean, that's and I've had this conversation with John. I've joked with him, but there is a general point here about being in a front office, which is, you're thinking about a deal, and then when you read something on the internet or you hear something and you think you might lose that deal, it's amazing. You think you're at your limit, but when you hear you might be losing a player or a deal, you have one extra year to get it done. And that's a lesson that I've learned. I've been in that position, and I think New York was in that position. I think in the moment they thought they'd lost him, and it gave them a little more motivation to add what they needed to do to get that deal done, and it got done that night.
So Cashman owes you a Christmas card, a holiday, something. I don't know, whatever. A dinner,
well,
if you dinner.
John Heyman a Christmas card for sure.
Okay, I'm just thinking because like if that tweet doesn't go out, the Yankees might not go where they went, and they might not have Aaron. I don't know. It's interesting.
I don't know that. Look, I know people think it was a done deal that he was going there, and that we were just used for leverage. But I do think there was a window there, And I think that tweet really spooked the Yankees to do what they needed to. And look, it's great that he's there. He's going to be a Yankee for life. He's one of the signature players in the league. And so, maybe what should have happened wound up happening all along. But yeah, I'll always remember that tweet. That's for sure.
Yeah, well, that's really fascinating to get some insight there. Okay, so then I want to take you to a spot that you're always linked with as well, obviously, aside from the time just now with San Francisco. Is there any comeback in you with the Dodgers to work with your buddy Andrew Friedman? We've seen the reports, so at least want to get a
Yeah.
comment on what's going on.
No, I appreciate it. I'm fortunate enough to have worked in the game for 20 years now and made a lot of friends. And, as tough as the last couple months have been, and look, make no mistake, whether you're a player getting released or DFA'd or you're a front office executive being let go, it's tough and you miss the game. But having people reach out, connect, see if I was interested in coming on board, that's been awesome. And it reminds you what a great family and community we have in baseball. And I have spoken to the Dodgers. I've spoken to some other teams, still kind of figuring it out. And like I said, the person who really wants to have me figure it out is my wife. So I got to get on that and get something done here pretty soon.
Well, she sounds like she wants you out of the house more than figuring out what the job is. What role? You've done so much. You were with the A's, you were with the Dodgers. Now you were the head honcho with the Giants. What role do you feel like I'm really good at this, that you're going to do the best? Or are you like, hey, I'll be a GM again. I'll be president of baseball operations again.
Yeah, it's really interesting, Eric. I was thinking about this. When you're a player, you always feel like you're the best option, right? I mean, that's why when we talk about platooning and pinch hitting, it really becomes frustrating for players because you get the bat taken out of your hand, and that's frustrating. And I think it's true for executives too. I mean, to survive in this game, to compete in this game, you have to feel like you're the best option. So, for me, I never aspired to be a GM. I never aspired to be a head of baseball operations. 20 years ago, Billy Bean hired me with the A's. I had no baseball experience, no professional experience, and he gave me that opportunity of a lifetime. And, again, I've been lucky to have been in the game 20 years, but I never said to myself, I want to be a GM, because there's so many jobs and you realize how tough and competitive it is to get into that quote unquote big chair. So as I sit here now, that's not important to me. It's not important to me to get back in that GM role. If it happens, great. But I love the game, and I know there's so many different ways that anybody can help an organization. And again, I have friends who are GMs, and the chance to be a special assistant, to be an advisor to one of them, I think not only would it be great personally, but it'd be nice professionally too.
Fine. Let me ask you about something that's been linked to the Dodgers, but shouldn't be because other teams have done it for years. Deferred money. What's your take on it? And obviously, you're a super smart dude. Can you help explain to some people that it's okay? And, I know there's a lot of people that are really angry about how it's worked. And I think some of that might just have to do with big market teams getting players. But just wanted your perspective on how it plays out right now and if there should be any changes to it in your mind.
Yeah, I don't really think so. I mean, obviously, the Ohtani deal was at a completely different level. Most of the deals that the Dodgers do, I feel like it's just a lever to get a deal done. I mean, it's really tough to negotiate a deal. You have both parties. Both parties have notions of what's fair. So you really want every lever at your disposal to find common ground. Performance bonuses are an example of that. Signing bonuses are an example of that. It's not just years and dollars, but there are other ways that you may try to bridge the gap. And, to the Dodgers' credit, they have used, this notion of deferral to bridge that gap. I mean, they may be at 30 and a player wants 40, and they say, hey, how about if we structure a deal with some deferrals where you get the money later, but you get your number? And so I don't really see an issue with that. Does MLB need to put some more rules and regulations in place on the quantity of those deferrals? I don't really think so. But if people feel like it makes sense, then I think MLB will look at it. But to your point, it doesn't affect your competitive balance tax number. Those are calculated and, take into account deferrals. So there isn't, some kind of, game that you can play with deferrals other than it's just another way to get deals done. And, I give the Dodgers credit that they've been able to use that to their advantage.
Okay, I have to ask because we have an argument on here all the time. Who would you have paid more for, Shohei Ohtani or Juan Soto?
It's a really tough one. I mean, I'm gonna have
Remember,
to
the
go
Dodgers. The Dodgers are calling, so you better say.
Yeah, but age matters too.
Age matters. Understood. If they were the same
greatest
free
two-way-
agent, let's say this: if they
Wait,
were in the
yeah.
same free agent class, not separate free agent classes, and you were still with the Giants, and the Giants ownership said you have this much money to go spend on one of them. Maybe that's a better way to
But
put it.
they're different ages. You're saying when Ohtani was like 30, 31.
Ohtani was what, 29, and Soto was 26, and they said, Farhan, you have a blank check to write to one of these guys. Who are you signing?
I would sign Shohei, but you're really talking about options 1A and 1B. I think with Shohei.
Oh, that's such a cop-out.
No, he said Shohei.
I know he said Shohei. I know.
Hey, the Dodgers tried to sign Juan Soto too, so I'm not really picking sides here. I mean, look, Juan got a bigger deal, so more power to him. And I think the fact that he was a free agent at 25-year-old still kind of blows your mind. I thought negotiations there would start. I looked at Judge's AAV of 40, and you figure he was 5 years younger. So 14 times 40, 14 for 560 was like just to get in the door. You had to start there, and obviously it went up another $200 million from there. But I mean, both great players. You're going to get me in trouble making me choose, but I think just the two-way aspect of Shohei, which I hope we get to see this year. It's just a one-of-a-kind thing.
Well, you mentioned the Dodgers. They try to sign everybody. What was it like? You had to compete against them. In the 1 year you guys did it, and then you obviously lost in the postseason. But What was it like every year? You're going into this, and you're saying, man, we're the big, bad Giants. We have a lot of money. We can go get guys. And then you have the Dodgers that are on a completely different level of, you guys are like the little kids down here, Giants. We're the Dodgers. So that had to put a little pressure on you in the organization, right? To try to play in the margins and find small advantages, which led, it seems like, to the platoon stuff and some of the different things you guys did, right? But, I mean, was it the Dodgers and the pressure that they put on? And listen, the Dodgers and Giants, they don't really get along very well, so.
Yeah, look, that was part of the strategy early on. I mean, when I came to the Giants, the team had been 50 games under 500 in the 2 years before I arrived. It was an aging roster. We had a big payroll. We didn't have a great farm system. So, and we weren't going to rebuild. I mean, that's just not something you do in San Francisco. So the question was, how do we compete as quickly as possible? And, one of the things that I would say at the time is we can't out-Dodger the Dodgers. They've got this head start on us. And maybe we can build the talent base to compete with them, which I think the organization has done over the last few years, or at least has moved in that direction. But, that was part of the reason we tried to be really creative with the roster and how we were managing things, because from a talent payroll perspective, we just couldn't compete with them, at least at that time. So, look, you've got 29 other organizations, not just the Giants, that have to look at the Dodgers as a standard for what they've been able to do. And it's not to say other teams can't compete, can't knock them out of the playoffs, which we've seen quite a few times in the last few years. But it's a big market team. They spend, they're smart. They do great with free agents. And I do think, LA, you have an advantage there. It's somewhere guys want to play. And they use that advantage to the maximum when they're able to bring star players in. So I think it's a fair point. And that's one of the things that I think created even more of a microscope on us getting quote unquote star players to be able to compete with, Betts and Freeman and Ohtani. And that, made that narrative an even bigger story.
If you can't beat them, join them. I mean, you've already been there, but obviously Dodger fans are like, sure, we'll take that combo again. But Farhan, thank you so much for joining us in all seriousness. Yeah, hope you have a really nice holiday, and also that, you get out of the house soon. So we'll keep locked on the news, okay?
Thanks a lot, guys. Appreciate it.
Hey, everybody. Be sure to like and subscribe for more content.
We're back here every weekday, all year long, so do not miss an episode.
The videos are coming in all day. Here's another video you might enjoy.
Baseball the way it should be covered.